Ricky and Max were heading to the office from the nearby square. In spring, they preferred to have lunch outside. The square was surrounded by a huge office building made of glass and concrete. In the doorway, they suddenly slowed down. Right in front of them, a homeless man slowly entered the business center. Max glanced at him squeamishly and stopped sharply that Ricky almost crashed into his friend. Ricky asked, "What's wrong?" Max felt disgusted and pointed at the homeless man. "Let him pass, otherwise we might catch some of his stuff. And he stinks as well." The homeless guy walked carefully through the door and stopped near the entrance. A few moments later, Max and Ricky showed up in the hall. Max continued to resent. And why are they even allowed in decent places? They have no manners at all. And how did they even end up like this? Ricky did not answer. He did not share that opinion, but he didn't argue either. Once inside, Ricky called Max. "Wait a second. I've got some cash left. I'll drop it in the charity box, and let's go." Ricky approached the counter with a box. He threw a few bills inside and asked his friend, "You want to donate?" "I try to give at least a little every week." Max yelled out, "No way! I've got kids actually, and I also have to change my car. I'm not giving my money to someone to spend it on people like him." The homeless guy was standing next to the box the whole time. He was holding an iron jar with coins in his hand. Max looked at the beggar and continued, "Look at him. I wouldn't be surprised if he waited until we left to steal the money from the box. I'm telling you, he's got no manners, just like an animal." Ricky looked at the homeless man, shrugged his shoulders as if apologizing for his friend, and headed for the elevator. The homeless man smiled sadly in return. Coming up to Max, Ricky said, "They actually collect donations for children, not the homeless." Max continued, "Who cares? I'm not gonna feed them." "But you did well. At least he'll see how sane people should behave." Waiting for the elevator, they looked at the charity stand again. The homeless man was still looking around. Max rejoiced. "I told you. Look at him." After a couple of seconds, the homeless man sighed, poured all the coins out of his jar, and sent them to the donation box. He hurried to leave the building. Max looked away unsatisfied. Ricky smiled. He seems to have set an example for us, how people should really behave. And he's got more manners than we do. When you point your finger at someone that you think is bad, think of yourself. The right way to make someone better is to set a good example, not judge them. Captains of all the ships would rather hit the worst of the storms than face the most brutal pirate of the southern seas, Pierce. Pierce and his crew had been robbing and sinking ships for years and never showed mercy or restraint. Their ship was called the Seine. "I see a cargo ship, Captain Pierce," the watchman shouted at the mast. "Get the sails up, we're going on board," commanded Pierce. It was a ship from Italy with the best wines. Pierce's men attacked the crew and carried all the wine and rum that was on the ship. For 3 consecutive days, the entire Seine crew drank and celebrated the lucky catch. A couple of days later, the watchman on the mast shouted again, "There is a sailing boat coming right at us, Captain." "Well done, sailor. Let's go on board," shouted Pierce. It was an Indian sailboat full of silks and furs. Pierce wasn't hiding his joy, and his crew took every single scarf from the ship. Pierce's crew was in their second week of cruising, and they were running out of food and water. Pierce did not want to return to the mainland and hoped they'd meet a merchant ship full of food. A couple of days after the last robbery, a grocery ship full of food and water came across the Send's path. Pierce's crew was rejoicing. They were finally going to eat nicely. "I'm sorry, Captain, but we're going to rob you now," Pierce told the captain of the other ship with a smile. "Mr. Pierce, I've heard about you and your crew, but I ask you to spare us. We are carrying food for the children and women whose fathers and husbands died in the war," said the captain of the ship. "Why should I believe you? What if you're bringing it for the rich gentleman? Half of our cargo is coconut shell pies and pumpkin juice. This food isn't for rich people at all." The old pirate was touched by these words because he also lost his father too early and often had to eat such food. He decided to transfer all his food stocks onto that ship so that the children could eat some delicious food. The sailors were not happy with this. In the evening, the captain gathered his dissatisfied crew on the deck and announced, "We do not rob women and children. I don't want to discuss my decision, and if someone doesn't agree with me, they can go overboard." The next day, the ship released by the pirates sailed back, and this time Captain Pierce was not going to let it go. "Good thing I found you so fast, Captain Pierce. For your kindness, I want to share half the gold I was paid," the captain shouted from the deck. Kindness is not a sign of weakness, and kindness comes back to absolutely everyone. Ellen and Paul were sitting on the terrace of a local cafe. Ellen didn't even try to hide how annoyed she was. A waiter came and put the ordered dishes on the table and politely left. Ellen looked at the plates and got disgusted even more, and told her companion with irritation, "I don't understand. Couldn't you think of something more interesting? This is the 100th time we've come here." Paul looked at the girl with confusion. He answered, "What's the problem? It's a good place, and that's why we come here so often." The girl raised her voice and started arguing. "A good place? Whatever. Do you have any idea how tired I am of the same menu? How tired I am of seeing the same waiters? You don't think about me at all." The young man shrugged his shoulders. He enjoyed the food here, and the waiters didn't bother him at all. He started silently enjoying his meal. But the girl did not even notice his silence and continued, "It's simply impossible to eat the same thing so often. If you're not going to do anything about it, I'd rather starve than choke myself with this monotonous junk." Ellen demonstratively moved the plate away from herself and made an offended look. There was silence. She was waiting for apologies and excuses, but Paul kept silent and just stared at the busy street. In a few moments, the young man stood up. Without saying a word, he took Ellen's plate and headed for the exit. The girl looked at him puzzled and shouted, "What are you doing? Are you crazy?" But Paul didn't answer. He crossed the road and headed for a small alley across the street. When he reached where he was going, Paul stopped. In the damp shadows, there was a tramp sitting on the ground. He looked exhausted. When he noticed Paul, he looked up with a smile. "What do you want, kid?" Paul gave him the plate with the food and added, "Nothing actually. Got you this. It's a gift." For a few seconds, the tramp was in doubts, trying to figure out what the trick was. But then he gently took the plate and started to eat quickly. Paul smiled. Now he suddenly felt happy and calm. He looked up and glimpsed at Ellen, who was watching everything from far away, and walked along the street. That night, he didn't go back to the cafe. Learn to appreciate what you have and be grateful for your fate. After all, every day there is someone in our world who asks the heavens for at least a little bit of what you have in abundance.